Welcome, everyone. This is Congressman Richard Hudson. I'm here live in Moore County. I want to thank everyone for joining us here on this call. I also want to thank all the many veterans who've come here today to stand with me in person. I'm here to discuss one of the most important priorities for me as Fort Bragg's congressman, and that's supporting the military, their families, and our veterans. In Congress, I've worked every day to get our troops and their families the resources they need and the resources they deserve. I helped write and introduce the Better Military Housing Act that President Trump signed into law last year as part of the 2020 NDAA. I wrote it to address the problems with military housing that I heard directly from families here at Fort Bragg. As a result of this law, the Department of Defense created the Tenant Bill of Rights for military families and had to implement a plan to address the health, safety, and quality issues that privatize military housing all across the country. I worked with President Trump to get the VA Mission Act signed into law so veterans get better health care at the VA or from a doctor in the private sector in their community. I've also worked to get our troops better pay, better equipment, and better support. In this year's National Defense Authorization Act, I was successful in getting 6 key provisions included to help our troops, their families, and our veterans. I secured a 10% increase in hazard duty pay. This priority stemmed from work I've focused on following the 2017 deadly ambush of our 3rd Special Group soldiers in Tongo, Niger. I made improvements to strengthen and expand access to the Preservation of the Force and Family, or the POTF program, for the Special Operations community. This program touches all aspects of the operator: physical, mental, social, and spiritual. I secured an amendment to expand the VA's burn pit registry to support veterans exposed to toxic burn pits in Egypt and Syria. This was a priority for me after one of my constituents, a Special Forces soldier in our community, deny access. I strengthened support families. This became a priority for me after I heard from family Bragg who expressed concern over how the FMP program is run, especially when a service member is relocated to a new duty station. Also improved impact aid funding for education around military bases. This federal funding makes up for the lost tax revenue for education in counties surrounding Fort Bragg with a high population of military families. I was able to secure a $16 million increase in this program. And finally, I support a 3% pay raise for our troops, included in this year's NDAA. Building on the largest troop pay raise in a decade and part of an overall 10% pay increase since President Trump took office. Despite all these measures I got written into the National Defense Authorization Act, last week, liberal groups run by Nancy Pelosi in Washington began running negative ads against me saying that I, quote, skipped out on this bill and pay raises for our troops. It's a bald-faced lie. Despite it being in the congressional record, what these ads don't say is that I was not able to vote on this final bill because I was in a mandated self-quarantine after exposure to a positive COVID-19 case. However, I submitted for the record, the congressional record, as is the protocol, that had I been able to vote, I would have voted yes. Either way, these ads are lies and are meant to mislead the public on my record of helping to write this bill and to support our military. Even CBS 17 in Raleigh exposed the truth behind these ads in a story that ran last night at 11 o'clock news. Their fact checker determined the ad was, quote, mostly false. Voters, and more importantly, our service members, their family, and our veterans deserve the truth. And because 30% of my district is new because of court-mandated redistricting last October and November, the vast majority of the folks in my district don't know either me or my opponent. And so the Democrats are taking advantage of this opportunity by misleading voters. Now, I'm honored to be joined today by several veterans and military family members to share their perspectives on this. We have Concord City Councilman and Vietnam veteran John Sweat, Sergeant Mike Verardo, who was severely wounded in action as a member of the 82nd Airborne, Michelle Black, the Gold Star spouse of 3rd Special Group Sergeant Brian Black, who was killed in action in the Operation Tongo, October 4th of 2017, and a Special Forces veteran, John Zumwalt. I'll have each of them say a few words, and then I'll be happy to open up for questions from the media. First, we'll start with Councilman John Sweat. John, thank you for joining us today.
Congressman, thank you. It's an honor. It's always an honor and a privilege to sit and talk with you about our veterans and their needs, and you've met that. First of all, I want to say that you've never skipped out on anything. You've answered the tough questions. You've been there for Concord, Cabarrus County, and other counties in your district, and for our bases. So you've never skipped out. First of all, I want to say that. Also, the VA Mission Act, a couple of things that Congressman Hudson mentioned, that gives us greater access as veterans. Caregiver benefits are there. It also helps the VA to recruit and give us the best and the brightest as far as doctors to care for our veterans. They've earned it. They've deserved it. I'm not talking about myself just as a veteran, but all our veterans and their families deserve the best care we can give for what they've done for our country, to give us the freedoms to come on today and speak like we're speaking now. He helped champion that and drove it home. That works also to provide hand in hand the greatest funding we've had for our VA in history. So he worked hard for that. That's a continuous effort to give us, as I said, the best and brightest for doctors to take care of what I consider the best and brightest, our veterans, our elder veterans and our younger veterans that are going out these days and taking care of our freedoms and following that tradition. One thing also is the Toxic VA Burn Pit Registry. That's something a lot of people don't know about. He has got the expanded the access for that. And that's important also because we still don't know exactly, that's our current generation's Agent Orange. And that's something we really need to delve into. And with Richard's help, that's going to happen. He expanded also, helped expand the greatest expansion we've had for GI Bill benefits. We want to train our troops and our military members whenever they go off and fight for us or support us, peacetime and wartime. We want to give them the best benefit we can to come back and learn and educate themselves, which therefore educates their family and takes care of them because, again, they're serving for us. They're taking care of us, and we owe that to them, among other things. The critical measures addressing the veterans' mental health and suicide rate. That's something near and dear. I've seen friends go through that, and if you serve in uniform, you've seen some things, heard some things that will set you in a different tone than a normal civilian. But that goes further than just the service member. It bleeds over into families, and families that they bear the brunt of that sometimes. So it's not just service members that Richard's talking about today. He's talking about the whole mission concept. He's talking about the family members. He's talking about the community they serve in. He's been there to help this. It's not just about that. He has the whole picture and the big picture in mind when he comes up and says, hey, I'm raising my hand for this because I believe in it. He's done his research. And one more time, he's never, shirked his responsibilities or ran away from anything. I don't want to take away from anyone else's time, but one more thing that, Richard is looking out for us. Congressman Hudson is looking out for our future veterans. Annually, he holds the service academies announcements and also the board panel to pick those individuals that's going to lead our military into the future. So he's gathering every bit of information he can. He's going with our elder veterans that served all through the different conflicts down to our young veterans and future veterans that haven't raised their hand and swore to serve yet. So he's following the whole picture, the big concept, the big picture. He's got my full faith in my family as well. And constituents here in Concord that do pull for him that are veterans. I can't speak for on the left side of things, but I can definitely speak for the friends I know that, Richard's got great support in the community, and he pulls together, honestly, across both sides of the aisle. He is one of the greatest people to pull together both parties to find what we need for our veterans and also for our community. So speaking from that, I say that, Richard is a great choice to go forward and give us more time so we can keep on what we're doing for our veterans and our families. Richard, thank you for an opportunity today. I do appreciate it. And thank you so much for what you do for us. It means a lot.
Well, thank you, John. And thank you for your service to our community on the city council. And thank you for your service as a veteran. So next, I'm going to introduce Mike Verardo. But Mike asked me to read something before I call on him. So let me get through this. Many years ago, Congressman Hudson visited Walter Reed Military Medical Center where I was recovering after being severely injured by 2 IED attacks in Afghanistan. My condition was tenuous and my status was listed as, quote, death imminent for a period of time. When Mr. Hudson saw me, I was unable to walk, feed myself independently, or imagine a future in which I wasn't hooked to machines. After my medical retirement from the Army, my wife and I moved to Charlotte. In 2015, we walked into an event for local leaders and I saw a gentleman gasp when he saw me. He cheered so loudly that nearly everyone at the event stopped to look. It was Congressman Hudson. Since that day, Congressman Hudson has been a staunch supporter in my long road home from war. I recently had my 120th surgery post-Afghanistan, and Congressman Hudson was among the first people through my hospital door. He joked and prayed with me, let me know that I remained in his family's daily prayers. I've seen him comfort grieving goals for our families, provide encouragement to our wounded warriors, and inspire our active military. Congressman Hudson creates policies that care for the wounded veteran and their caregivers, like my wife, Sarah. Provides my care so that I can live at home. We need to send leaders like Richard Hudson back to Congress. The lives of our nation's military and veterans depend on it. Thank you, Mike. Mike, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Congressman. I just know that you have my brothers and sisters in arms in your hearts daily and fight tireless for us. And for anyone to say otherwise is just unfathomable to me. And I just can't say enough great things about you and the work you do for our military. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mike. It means the world for you to be on here today, and I'll get you back for making me read that. Thanks. So next, I want to ask Michelle Black to speak. Michelle Black's husband, Sergeant Brian Black, is a true American hero. He's someone I didn't know, but as I've gotten to know his brothers and teammates from his ODA, I just tell you, I've never heard of a more remarkable person. Michelle, I've gotten to know you and your family over the years, and I love you, and I appreciate you making time to join us today. So I'll turn it up.
Well, thank you for having me, Mike. Definitely wouldn't have missed being here. You've supported us just in so many ways. Me, my family, and the team since Brian passed away. You were there for us and the surviving team, not offering your support loudly and publicly, but it was privately and respectfully. You know, you were there in Arlington, hidden in the crowd. That day, I believe you got a bracelet that you still wear that helps you, remember remember the team. So you were there when me and my sons buried Brian. And at the back of the church in Fayetteville, North Carolina, when we did the memorial service there. And also at the chapel, at the unit memorial, when his brothers said goodbye to 4 of their own. And you've been there many times since, and you even went to Niger, and I guess to see where the ambush first occurred, or occurred firsthand. But I realized I can call you anytime if I need anything. And though I moved from the East Coast to the West Coast since that time, you weren't just my congressman for that time. You'll always be my congressman. And I know I always hear from the guys that you're always there for them still. And I know that every October 4th, I will get a call from you or a text from you, just checking in and letting me know that you and your family are praying for me and mine. And because of that, it's clear that you do everything you can to care for and pour into the lives of those who've given their lives, or given their entire lives in service to this nation, including those of us who have lost our spouses, or those who have made the ultimate sacrifice. And because of you, families like mine will never be forgotten, or the sacrifice we made. And because of men like you, I know that service members have someone they can always count on. So
thank you. That means the world to me for you. Thanks for joining us today to share that with us. So our final speaker, John Zumwalt, is a retired Special Forces, lives here in Moore County. John, appreciate all you do in the community, and thank you for making time to be with us here today. I'll turn it over to you.
Well, remind me never to go last in a group like this again. I would like to tell folks that I've never been wounded. I just look like this. So if you're feeling sorry for me, nature did this to me, not an IED. As I sat here listening, I'm going to call an audible here. I'm going to direct my remarks directly to your opponent. I am very upset, in case you can't tell. I have so many friends, and all of us do in this community, because we're a community full of warriors. a community full of warriors, wives, families, children. We've lost so many. When I look at a wife who lost a guy who was doing his job, never should have happened, and see how you support her. When I see a young man sitting on that couch with one leg, I get furious. I don't get furious at the bad guys, not right this minute. I'm furious with your opponent. You came in here, ma'am, and you made some statements that were not true, and you may call them mistakes, you may call them misstatements, but people like me, men and women like me, and not just military women like me and me, rather me and like me, but working people, hardworking people, people who go to work every day. We call that a lie, an outright lie. And we call people who tell lies, we call them liars. And ma'am, you are a liar. To come in here and try to convince us that the congressman that we know has not been there every single time we've ever called on. Shame on you. All I can talk about are things that I know about. Ma'am, you cannot convince me that you are so inept, that you actually made a mistake, or maybe you are. It's one or the other. You are so inept that you made a mistake and said what you said, or you told a lie. I want to ask you a question. Where have you been? Where have you been? Where were you all of these times when we needed you, when veterans needed you? I'll put our congressman, forget his record, I'll put his personal contacts and the things he's done for us personally because he wanted to, up against you any day, anytime. And all of a sudden, you arrive on the scene and you try to tell us that you'll do anything it takes to get into office. And Richard Hudson is not a good guy. This is the home of the 82nd Airborne, the home of special operations. We know what pandering looks like, ma'am, and it looks just like you. And shame on you. I'm going to tell you one story. One story. I could tell many about what our congressman did. We had a 92-year-old man living in our community. His name was Mr. Moss. He had literally fought his way through the Pacific, one of the most horrendous, horrid theaters that's ever existed on our earth. And he fought his way through there, never asked for a thing in his life. He and his wife said later that they never felt like they deserved it. Can you imagine? Well, he got so old, he couldn't take care of himself. He was 92. His wife didn't want to put him in a nursing home. They spent their entire savings paying for someone to come in. All she asked for was someone to come in and help bathe him and help move him to the living room so that he could look out the window. And he loved to, she said, watch the birds and watch people that went by on the sidewalk. That's all they wanted. Well, one of our county commissioners here tried to get involved and help him, but she couldn't, because you've got all of us here, veterans, understand the VA and how it works, or how it doesn't work sometimes. So we contacted Congressman Hudson. Someone called him. I don't even know who it was. Within 10 minutes, it might have been 15, but it wasn't much longer than that, he called back. And he got personally involved with trying to help Mr. Moss. All they wanted, let me tell you what the VA had told him. They had said to him, we can help you, but it'll be at least 6 months. Well, they were broke by then. Mrs. Moss said, we didn't want anything from you before. We don't want anything now, but we've got to have help. Look what he did for you. And no help. So we did the best we could as a community. The congressman, oh, by the way, they wanted Mr. Moss to come to their office. That was one of the requirements. They wanted him to come to their office. He was bedridden. He couldn't even lift his head, and he needed help to do that. But they wanted him to come to their office. Anyway, I've gone on too long telling this story, but here's the bottom line. Congressman Hudson was on that phone, or a member of his staff was, daily. trying to get this taken care of. Who else do you know that can do that? No. Who else do you know that would have done this? Mr. Moss died. He died within a short time. Now, lady, you ran that ad for votes. When Richard Hudson helped that man, he may not have known how long he would live, but he did know he wouldn't live long enough to vote for him. And that's the kind of man he is. I could go on and I could go on. I could go on with stories about of this kind. Stories that illustrate not just lawmaking and care for what a congressman would say, but rather stories that illustrate his heart and where his heart is. And that's what I care about. So I'm going to tell you something. You don't just come into our congressional district and think that you're going to ingratiate yourself to us because of some ad that you made that is a complete and total lie. If you have 1 ounce of decency, in your soul, lady, and I think you probably do, you'll renounce that ad and you'll fire whoever wrote it. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Michelle, Mike, and John for making the time to be here with us today. I'm honored to be Fort Bragg's congressman, and voters deserve to know the truth about my record, supporting the troops, supporting our veterans. To all the reporters on the call, you can tell this is an emotional issue for us because it's something we care deeply about. At this time, I'm happy to take reporters' questions. If you'd like to ask a question, if you would wave your hand on the Zoom, the wave feature, Greg Steele, my press secretary, will unmute you and we can ask the question. Greg, you may need to come on here and tell us who you're calling on, but be happy to take questions now. Thank you.
Sure thing. We'll go to Matt Grant at Fox 46.
Hey, Congressman Hudson, Matt Grant, Fox 46.
Matt,
yeah, good to talk to you as well. So I've spoken with Richard Stacekel and his attorney, Natalie Kwam, and the family of Jordan Way, and they have expressed frustration that 10 months after the medical malpractice bill was signed into law, which you championed, nothing has been done with the DOD, and there's still apparently no framework for how to investigate or pay out these claims of malpractice. Have you spoken with the DOD, and what's your thoughts on this delay that has the Stacekel family pretty upset right now?
No, it's very frustrating, Matt, and thank you for all the reporting you did on this issue. I think reporters like you who helped raise Rich's story, awareness among members of Congress is why we were able to get that landmark legislation. Being honest with you, I didn't think we would be able to change the Ferris Doctrine, 50 years of case law in 1 year, and especially when we had the Armed Services Committee in the House and the Senate against us, when we had the Pentagon against us. But I joined forces with a Democrat from California, Jackie Spear, and together we made this a bipartisan fight. And we were able to change the Ferris Doctrine so that victims of medical malpractice from the military, like Rich Stacekel, were able to get some compensation, but more importantly, to create a deterrence for future military medical folks to be more careful, to stop future problems like this. But you helped us elevate that issue and you helped us get that done. So thank you for that. I am so frustrated because the deadline for having this rule out was September 30th, and they haven't met that yet. On January 1st of this year, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force claims offices began recording receipts of claims. So they are documented, and the claims are being held in abeyance pending the issuance of this final rule. The drafting of the rule is still underway. Again, the deadline was September 30th. They've missed that deadline. I've received regular updates on this process. I am continuing weekly to call the VA and ask where we are. I will continue to do that. The DOD, excuse me. But we're going to continue to work with the DOD to make sure they meet their commitment and we get these claims filed. But it is a frustration that they haven't met this deadline. But we're going to keep working on it. And we're not going to stop till we get it done. Thank you for that question.
Thanks, Matt. Next, we've got Brian Anderson with the AP.
Hi, Congressman. Thank you so much. Brian Anderson here at the EP, and thanks to the veterans and their families who are on this line as well, telling their stories. I'm grateful for them sharing that as well. So right now, there's a lot of small businesses that are hurting, and there's some people that say the $500 billion stimulus that Senator Mitch McConnell is proposing just ain't going to cut it and isn't enough. And President Trump has signaled support for something above the 2.2 trillion that Nancy Pelosi has called for. What's your position on this? And have you had any direct conversations with the president or Nancy Pelosi regarding this back and forth here?
Well, thank you for that question, Brian. And thank you for joining us today. I have talked to the president about this on numerous occasions. Even had an opportunity on Air Force One to talk to him about it. Last time he came to North Carolina, and I'll be honest with you, I'm very frustrated with Republicans and Democrats over this because there are a lot of people out there hurting who have needs, and they need to be addressed. And Congress came together in a unique way, unfortunately for Congress, when we passed the first several COVID relief bills. But we are now in a logjam, and I blame both sides for it. I think. I could have told you in July that we as Republicans were going to have to spend more money than we want to spend. And probably in some places we don't want to spend that money to get the things that we know need to be done, like liability protection for schools and businesses, like more flexibility for the PPP program so that small businesses can continue to access liquidity so they can keep people on the payrolls. And look, there's a lot of needs in states. But on our side, we're frustrated that only 25 cents of every dollar we've given to the states has been spent. The rest of it they're holding, while cities and counties and school systems need that money. But when you have a representative government, you don't get 100% of what you want. You go and I, as the representative of people of this district, I go to Washington every week and I fight like the Dickens for what we need. But at the end of the day, we cut a deal and we compromise. As Jesse Helms famously said, I won't compromise my principles, but I will compromise my preferences. We got to compromise our preferences, and we've got to make a deal at the end of the day to take care of the people. And you won't get 100% of what you want, but you come back tomorrow and try to get that. And that's where we need to be. Unfortunately, the Senate on the Republican side has dug in and not willing to budge. And Nancy Pelosi so far has not been willing to budge. She has a whole wish list of things she wants that have nothing to do with COVID. That are payoffs for Illinois and California and a whole lot of stuff in there that I don't like now, but I am willing to meet her part of the way on the spending. I'm willing to look at more money for states. I'm willing to compromise. And I think, most of my colleagues are, but we've got to get there. And I know the president is willing to move off of his number. I applaud him for that. That's part of the conversations that he and I have had. He wants to take care of the folks. He knows that he's got to compromise as well, and he's willing to do that. But Pelosi's got to be willing to move, and our senators got to be willing to move.
And I did have a quick follow-up question for a separate matter. Just with regard to this as a campaign call, and the campaign question I had was just, it seems that President Trump is in a weaker position in North Carolina than he was in 2016. And the same goes for Dan Forest compared to Pat McCrory. I know you can't really necessarily trust the polling, but that just generally seems to be where things are. What do you think this down ballot effect will have on you, particularly given redistricting has made this a tighter race than it was previously expected to be?
Well, President Trump, I believe, is going to win North Carolina. The enthusiasm for him out there is off the charts. It's higher than what I remember in 2016. He's going to carry this district that I represent. I'm working really hard to make sure I carry it as well. But I haven't seen, the statewide polling on the governor's race, so I can't really comment on that. But I don't really believe those other races are going to impact my race particularly, because I think my race is going to come down to my record and what I stand for. And I believe this district, numbers are a lot tighter than any of the other districts. This is my fourth term in Congress. This is my third different district. Each one's been pretty different from the last. The numbers are pretty tight, so I think this. My margin of victory is going to be smaller than it's ever been in the past. But I think I'm going to get there. And I'm not sure the top of the ticket matters, except that it's going to impact turnout. I think a lot of money turning out Democrats, and the president is going to turn out a whole lot of Republicans. So And we will provide to all the folks on the call a copy of the fact check that ran last night, as well as the documents that we submitted to TV stations that document the lies in these ads. We appreciate y'all joining us today.
Hey, sir, we've got one last question. Just one more from David Larson, North State Journal, and that'll be last question.
Hey, David, how you doing?
Doing well, sir. Thank you, Congressman. Yeah, David Larson, North State Journal, also Stanley County Journal, which is in your district. My question is, this press conference, a lot of it was about the ad that you believe they were trying to make you appear as absent on the NDAA. And I was just curious if Pat Timmons Goodson had reached out to your office so that she could contribute, or if she was portraying you as being absent on the issue, or if you've heard a lot of what her ideas on that were, if she was critical of you in that area.
Well, I haven't seen her or spoken to her since January 1st when we were both at an event in Fayetteville. But she has mail pieces that she's paying for, and Pelosi's Super PAC and as well as the DCCC are running the TV ads. They are also funding her campaign. She had very little campaign money until second quarter of this year when Pelosi put her on her list and she started receiving Act Blue donations. And that breathed the life into her campaign that she had never had before. So her campaign is completely being funded by California, New York, other places. And her, she's running in league with the folks who are running these TV ads. And you can tell she's coordinating because she's doing mail to coordinate with those ads. So if she would denounce these ads and tell them to pull them down, they would. But so far she's not done that. All right. Well, thank you all for joining today. If you have any further questions, please just let Greg know. We'll be happy to make some time available to you. Again, thank you to John and Michelle and Mike and John. Really appreciate each of you for your service to our country and for making time to be with me today. Thank you to all the veterans who are here today with me. It really means a lot to me that you would come down here and make your time to stand with me. Thank you all. God bless you. And we'll talk to you soon.